Mr. Doggett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to each of our witnesses. We, of course, know that regardless of the subject, President Trump has little interest in cooperating or collaborating with Democrats in trying to find solutions to the problems that our country faces. But listening to the comments this morning of my Republican colleagues about the many advantages of NAFTA and all that it has done that has been good for our country, I have some difficulty in reconciling that with what President Trump is saying about it being the worst trade deal in the history of the country, about it being a disaster. And I wonder if he is even collaborating with our Republican colleagues in designing new trade policy. I represent the city of San Antonio, in which NAFTA was signed. And for San Antonio and Central Texas, NAFTA has not been a disaster. It's overall been a benefit. It's been a disaster for the women who worked at the Levi plant in San Antonio, and it's been a disaster for some other parts of the country, but on the whole in our area, there have been a number of economic benefits from NAFTA. Some people say that given the total inconsistency between President Trump, not only and our Republican colleagues here today, but they point to the inconsistency between him and his own advisors. Yesterday's announcement of the NAFTA objectives appears to demonstrate, again, that total inconsistency, because it sounds like the objectives are kind of a warmed over TPP, which he's already rejected, that's the place that he wants to begin. And others have speculated that he will discover that trade policy, not unlike healthcare policy, is complicated, something all of you knew. And that perhaps his response will be the same as we are hearing today. Let's just forget it and repeal it all. Mr. Lambarger, I found a lot of merit in your testimony. The emphasis on the integrated supply chains, which I see for some of our companies there in San Antonio and throughout Texas. What would be the effect of just saying we've had enough, it's too complicated, Republicans can't agree among themselves as on health care, and just terminating NAFTA? Could it really be done given 20 years of integrating the supply chains, and what would the impact be on American business and American workers?
I think the impact would be significant and very detrimental, not only to large companies, by the way. There's no question that large companies like ours would have not only higher costs and less competitiveness, but we would have lower sales, and therefore we would have to reduce our workforce. That's my true belief. I also think, though, for small companies, Cummins has more than 2,500 U.S. suppliers. Many of them are small and medium-sized companies. These companies are now very sophisticated in how they participate with Cummins international trade. Many of them started off as just a few hundred people in one small town in the Midwest or some other part of the country, and then because they've started to supply Cummins, they've grown, and many of them have even opened overseas offices, things they couldn't have imagined years ago, and have added employees at home now to sustain business they have outside of the U.S. So small, medium-sized, and large companies all benefit as part of this regional supply chain that NAFTA has created. So I'm very convinced that terminating NAFTA would have a very, very detrimental effect on the U.S. economy.
I appreciate the fact that you also advocate enforcing environmental and labor conditions, and find it, again, totally inconsistent with what President Trump has said, that he's proposing to cut, not just by a little, but by 80%, a bureau in the Labor Department that is focused on monitoring the treatment of foreign workers, and that has been condemned by a number of American businesses, along with the AFL-CIO, and that the White House has no explanation of why it would reduce the enforcement by 80%. Ms. Drake, you have focused on the investor state protection, which is something that has concerned me, along with the failure to enforce environmental and labor regulations. Is there any reason, particularly with Canada, why we can't rely on a mature court system to adjust any differences that we might have? Don't American businesses deal in the Canadian courts all the time?
I've seen no evidence that we can't trust Canadian courts, and
I've been having this debate with folks who support ISDS for quite a long time. And it's really when businesses ask for certainty upon investment, there shouldn't be any guarantee of profits or certainty of profits. And it's workers who often don't have any certainty under trade agreements.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.